This song is by Woody Guthrie. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Hey everybody, just wanted to talk to you a little bit, and bear with me because I wrote something up. I'm going to have to look down at it every once in a while. But anyways, Tuesday, tomorrow, November 3rd, Election Day here in America. I do encourage you to vote if you haven't. And if you have an absentee ballot that you haven't mailed in yet, go ahead now and take it over there to the elections office, or if there's a drop box available, do that. And I just want to talk a little bit about what I think and feel about where we are as a nation and where we go from here. We've never been in this place before, with our very democracy in such a profound crisis. There's never been such an effort to convince Americans that our electoral system can't be trusted, which is simply not true. Yes, foreign actors are doing their part in sowing misinformation, but the main bad actor is our own President of the United States. And it gives me no pleasure to say that, but that is the truth. Never in our history has a sitting president fomented the kind of mistrust and lies regarding our elections that this president has. Never has a presidential candidate not commit to the peaceful transition of power, win or lose, the bedrock of our democracy. I am 63 years old. I voted for president the first time in 1976. Yes, I am a Democrat, but I am first and foremost someone who strives to be a decent human being. I believe in our democratic principles and form of government, the truth and the rule of law. I am tired of the politics of personal destruction that the president, the Republican Party, and the right-wing media engage in, all to whip up hatred, disdain, and contempt for anyone they consider liberal, secular, politically correct, elitist, etc. I find this personally offensive, as I count myself as a sincere and good citizen of this country. I have always worked hard, paid my taxes, and strived to make my community better. Do Republicans really think we Democrats are so heinous and evil that even working or cooperating with us to solve our many problems is tantamount to giving in to the devil himself? If you really think this way, please go get a psych evaluation. Or better yet, search your own conscience instead of blindly relying on your president and other authority figures you look up to tell you how you should think. You're always complaining about the government telling you what to do, but have no problem when President Trump and others tell you what to think. Undermining trust in our electoral system is also a huge slap in the face to all the dedicated, hard-working election officials and volunteers, both Republican and Democrat, who strive to serve this country with pride and professionalism in making sure voting is safe and secure. Get this straight. There is no widespread voter fraud in this country. There is widespread voter suppression, especially against African Americans who suffer long lines and hours to vote due to fewer poll places in their precincts, as well as fewer and often malfunctioning voting machines, in stark contrast to the shorter lines and better equipped mostly white precincts. In fact, voters in black neighborhoods wait 29% longer to cast ballots than voters in white neighborhoods. There are discriminatory voter ID laws, voter purging, voter intimidation, and more. And I do suggest if you're going to vote tomorrow, call up your elections office today and make sure you know what precincts you're supposed to vote in, because that can change and sometimes you're not informed. So you might want to do that. Another reason to vote is, of course, the coronavirus pandemic. Again, we have a president who's claiming we've licked COVID-19 when in truth it's the other way around. 9 million infected, over 230,000 dead. No, President Trump isn't responsible for the actual virus, but he is responsible for the shoddy response and his utter lack of interest in protecting Americans from the worst ravages, both health-wise and economic-wise, of this deadly disease. And that is unforgivable. Politicizing mask wearing and ridiculing the use of masks has allowed the virus to literally explode all over our country. And now, after the White House had its own super spreader event that infected over 30 staffers and Congress members, including the President himself, he and Vice President Mike Pence have held their own super spreader events all over the country. It has now been determined that these rallies, with thousands crammed together with no social distancing and hardly a mask in sight, have resulted in 30,000 confirmed cases and 700 deaths. Meanwhile, President Trump whines about hearing nothing but COVID, COVID, COVID. He's bored with it. He wants to pretend it doesn't exist. And his administration has openly admitted that they are no longer even pretending to try to contain it, while at the same time calling the qualified doctors idiots. Are these reckless, callous, and cruel actions what you call leadership? In addition, President Trump and the Republicans are hoping the now hyper-conservative Supreme Court will declare the Affordable Care Act unconstitutional, again making decent health care for millions unaffordable and out of reach. Only with a change can we move closer to the goal of universal health care, because health care is a human right. Another reason to vote is environmental justice and climate change, which is real. The Trump administration has rolled back over 100 environmental regulations. They call them job killers. I call them protections. These regulatory rollbacks will make our air dirtier, our water sources more polluted, and allow all kinds of heavy, toxic, radioactive metals to leach underground, harming our crops and food supply at the source, and also poisoning those who live in neighborhoods where these polluting facilities operate. And if we don't address climate change ferociously and urgently, our very survival on our planet is in doubt. And we're running out of time to make a real difference in our future. We must transition from fossil fuels to renewable, clean energy, which won't happen without a change in who we elect. Another reason to vote is to fight racial injustice. That's what those peaceful protesters practicing their First Amendment rights are doing. Don't think it's ingrained in our system? Well, let me give you a comparison example. When Dylan Ruth, the young, hate-filled white man who massacred 9 worshipers at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, how was he apprehended? He was pulled over in North Carolina with his Glock pistol in the back seat. Still, the officers managed to arrest him without incident or a hint of violence. They then took him to the station to question him. They sat him in a chair. He was wearing ankle and wrist chains. And then they politely asked him if he was hungry and brought him lunch from McDonald's. Then they very patiently and in a very low-key fashion interrogated him about the murders. Contrast that with George Floyd, a black man accused of the horror of passing a $20 counterfeit bill out of business. He was violently pulled from his car and then handled roughly by 3 officers on the scene, which resulted in one of them wrestling him to the ground and then placing a knee literally on his neck, where the officer proceeded to keep it there for almost 9 minutes. We all saw it. Mr. Floyd was pleading with him, crying he couldn't breathe, but the officer would not let up. The other 2 officers standing by did nothing. A crowd gathered and urged the officer to stop, saying, "You're killing him." But the officer did not stop, even as Mr. Floyd uttered his last words, "Mama," before he passed out. The officer, who still continued, even after that, to keep his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, was not bothered by the fact that he was being filmed, because he knew the law enforcement institution he was part of would back him up. So George Floyd, who didn't come close to killing anybody, was instead killed himself. 2 arrests for 2 very different crimes with 2 very different outcomes. That is what racial injustice is and how it operates in this country. This has to change. Lastly, the reason to vote is the mistreatment of the poor and working class in this country. I myself am a working class American. We must have a government that understands that the poor and working people in this country have been bearing the weight and burden of a system that allows the wealthy and powerful to sit on their necks. Financial and corporate power must be reined in. It must be tamed and, like a wild horse, broken, something the current administration has absolutely no intention of doing. Everyone who works in this country deserves a living wage. and to be treated with respect and dignity. We must have a country where every worker is treated as an essential worker. Raising the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour is just a start. I leave you with this quote from poetess Michelle McCann. She wrote this in April of this year in response to those wishing we could go back to normal. Here's what she said. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature. Artist American hero Fannie Lou Hamer once said, "We are all related. Say hello to your relatives." So my fellow citizens, neighbors, and friends, I ask the question Martin Luther King Jr. asked in his last book, America, will we have chaos or community? It really is up to us to have the courage to act. Why? Because reality TV is not reality, never was, and it never will be. We deserve better than a fake TV businessman and a fake TV president, or we're going to find ourselves with a fake TV democracy. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, and I saw above me that endless skyway, I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. So my friends, we are being called to go forward, not backwards, while being peacemakers in our words and deeds. Let's do this together. Go vote. The first step. Stay safe and stay well. Bye.